Okay, so now we're into part two, chapter 10. We just finished up with Title 9 and sports and socialization, and now we're moving on to mass media and gender socialization. And again, the idea is that the message that girls and women receive is that a woman's role in society is very tightly constrained. Feminists have pointed out that pretty much on television, you're either a sex object or a mom. You're never really allowed to be the lead person without that issue, being decided in the plot line. Meanwhile, other characters, like the character House, first couple of seasons, he didn't have a romantic interest. He bought hookers, and this was on the Family Fox network. So clearly there is a disparity in how media portrays and then socializes women. We talk a little bit about plastic surgery. Again, here the message is youthfulness, often focused a lot on women. The book shows what looks like a facelift. Leading surgery still in the United States is rhinoplasty, or a nose job. And then, of course, breast augmentation. But again, we find cultural differences here as well. Culturally, in Brazil, for instance, it's butt implants are huge. And in Japan, it's getting the crease of the eye folded to make it look like a Western eye. That's also part of plastic surgery. Then we go into the issue of gender and inequality, and we get into the pay gap. There's an inequality in what men and women earn, even if they're doing roughly the same job. But also there's a graph here, table 10.3, that talks about the percentage of women in occupations. And you find, for instance, healthcare support occupations, this is like health aides and nurse aides and CNAs, 87% are women. We find 56% of women are in the service occupations. So 55 in food prep and serving. So while only 15% are in architecture and engineering. There are clearly disparities for men and women, and then those become even more pronounced as we look at African American, Hispanic, and Asian women and the roles that they play. For instance, 36% of physicians and surgeons are women, but of that, 21% are Asian American women that are the women in there. So clearly some differences. So the pay gap used to be really significant. Now it's 79 cents a woman earns for every dollar a man earns. Used to be down in the 50s. But still, that's for similar or same kinds of jobs. Clearly, that's an issue. The other part that never seems to get addressed is the issue of paid work and family work. Women are expected to do family work, and it's uncompensated and not rewarded, and there is no retirement program. So women who take off from work to care for relatives or care for young children, they're not compensated at all. They lose retirement years and pay increases and things like that that are never recouped. And in the British system, there's actually discussions about a way to try to fix that, because clearly if women are doing the bulk of that heavy lifting, and we find that to be important in our society, we have to find a way to adequately reward that and not take away from, let's say, the National Pension Program, which is something they have in England. Theories on the gender differences. The initial theory was a guy named Talcott Parsons, big name in sociology, but he thought that men just liked instrumental tasks like being engineers, and women just liked expressive tasks like taking care of children. Well, of course, that's, again, that only explains things that are already in existence. So it only really explains the status quo, doesn't really explain how you got there. Another model put forward by the functionalist is what's called the human capital model. This is the model that says men pursue work and certain kinds of work from a very early age that gets them experience, that puts them in the realm of getting higher paid jobs later. Conflict perspective, of course, isn't really having any of that, points to the disparities in society. And for instance, the fact that, we want our society to have kids, yet we penalize young couples for childcare, and we penalize women for taking off time to have children. They lose time in, if they were a lawyer pursuing partnerships, or in academia on the way for tenure. So these are issues that they point out, and they show, I think pretty convincingly, that this difference is clearly bent into the gender stereotypes and things that we've discussed so far. So within that, conflict perspectives are 4 feminist perspectives: liberal feminism, radical feminism, and socialist feminism, and multicultural feminism. Make sure that you know all 4 of those. Those will be making an appearance in the test. So real quickly, liberal feminism, this is from the 1960s. This is sort of the Betty Friedan and a bunch of other what turned out to be often educated white women that wanted access to work after they got degrees. And so their whole thing was, let us work. And of course, that was a disconnect between women of color who were already working, and they just wanted equal pay. There's radical feminism, pushed often by sort of extremists like Andrea Dworkin, that say basically, we don't need men at all. Don't know how that's going to work out biologically, but all men are bad, don't need men at all. Socialist feminism, their perspective says you have to address the issues of paid work and make women more equal on that playing field, and then equality will happen. And then there's multicultural feminism, which is basically almost a response to the first kind of feminism, which says, listen, the perspectives of middle-class white women are probably different than that of lower-class women of color, and that all of those need to be addressed. All right, so chapter on social structure, chapter 5, class, chapter 7, gender, chapter 10. These will be on our test coming up. Make sure that you look into them and study hard. And the test will be timed. And good luck.